The major thing I've learned, and the big takeaway I would say about what I've learned from the last like 5 years after school and being in a city like Atlanta, is that it's all about trade-offs.
This is it. This is the Pencil Kings podcast that you are now listening to. Thank you for listening. And today we are going to be talking to Brendan Carroll. And before we get started, I just want to tell you about our Patreon page because we're trying to do more things with our podcast. A lot of people have emailed me asking me, can you do more podcasts? And the answer is yes, but it does take time and it does take money to make these things happen. So if you would like to support this podcast, you can go to Patreon. That's patreon.com/Pencil Kings and get all the information there. Now that is out of the way, welcome to the call, Brendan. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's probably earlier here than it is there. But
we're just in the end of the afternoon. I'm still in Germany.
Yeah.
It's Oktoberfest time, so I'm going to
wow.
get to experience. I'm not going to go to the main one, but I'm going to go to the smaller Oktoberfest in Frankfurt, and it'll be sort of like a mini bucket list item that I think a lot of people have gone to, and I want to check out what it's all about. So I've got my costume ready to go, and it should be a fun time.
Oh wow, that's great.
So we are here to talk about your art, and you're a fine artist. And to give people a sense of what you do, could you sort of sum up the type of art that you're creating in about a minute or so, and then we'll dive into the story behind what that art is all about.
Sure. I'm a painter. I've been painting, I guess, for the past 15 years, and the work now, if you're looking at it, is kind of several layers of gestural abstract painting mixed with imagery and text from some pop references and pieces of decals and stickers from years ago, and they get layered together and then kind of ripped through, so they kind of look like torn up abstract paintings and pictures layered on top of each other.
Cool. I think I was just looking at some of the galleries on your website, and I think that's a great explanation. And if you're listening and you want to see what Brendan's work looks like, you can find the notes at pencilkings.com/Brendan Carroll. That'll be BRENDAN-CARROLL. So whatever links we mention, you'll be able to check those out. Mm-hmm. Now, how did you get started doing that? Because I feel that this is an evolution. You definitely did not start with ripped up abstract paintings.
Yeah, I mean, I'd always been like very interested in kind of the fine art trajectory of being a painter, and I was taking fine art classes in undergraduate, and kind of became very kind of bowled over by a lot of the like modernists like Jackson Pollock and William de Kooning, guys like that, and seeing their work for the first time and seeing how I reacted to it, I was kind of like, that's what I want to do. I want to make paintings that make people have this reaction or feel this way. And so, there's a lot of like romance to that, and I had always just kind of wanted to live that painter fine art style of life, which meant like, I moved to New York after school and really kind of immersed myself in trying to be a part of that lineage of artists. So, it came from just being really informed by all of these modernist and old guard abstract expressionist painters, and then kind of being influenced by all the contemporary painters that are out there today and seeing all the new work that's out there as I was living in New York. And those influences kind of from the past and from today are kind of mashed up and squeezed together into making the paintings that I make today. So they're the kind of combination of all the influences that I've had through all of those old modernist painters to the postmodernist, more contemporary guys that are out there today.
That makes sense. And there's one point that I would like to ask clarification on. And you said when you were in school, you were, I think you used the word interested in the trajectory of a painter's career, if I remember correctly. Can you explain that a little bit more in detail? Because I'm just curious.
Yeah, like the fine art style of like making a living as an artist is probably very different than that of like trying to make a living through like a more applied means of artistic skill. So, there isn't like a job opening for fine art painter, and what it means to try to participate in that kind of career is not something that has like a well designed career path. So you kind of have to like forge that yourself by, making work that's kind of innovative or original, and getting with a group of artists that are interested in trying to kind of achieve something at a kind of real high level of, I don't know, artistic achievement. And there aren't a lot of kind of rewards or kind of normal career fence posts along the way by which like mark your progress. So it means basically that you end up like doing this kind of thing as less of a career, but kind of more of a I don't know. It sounds like so cheesy, but like more as like a calling, because it's going to be something where you'll have to make your own way in finding how to be an artist in the fine art realm, rather than, say, if you're an illustrator or graphic designer, you can find firms and companies with which you can work to kind of build a resume, build a career. But within the fine art world, you're really kind of having to forge your own path. And it just doesn't have the kind of straight ahead, easy to describe career trajectory that maybe something that has a more well-defined set of job skill requirements would have, or something. I don't know. That's a terrible description.
No, I don't think so. I think that's a great description. And it's like, for me, being a video gamer, or formerly a video game artist, that's kind of how I felt. Although you're doing it to like a much more difficult degree. That I felt that the cool thing about art is that you don't have to have a piece of paper certifying that you can do the art. All you need to do is to show someone that you can do the art. Mm-hmm. So you don't have to go to any fancy school. You don't have to mentor under somebody. I mean, these things can help, but they're not required. If you want to be a doctor, you better have that piece of paper.
Right.
Or you want to be a lawyer, you better have that piece of paper. And so I always like that part about art. And just when you were telling your story, I couldn't help but think of someone in a rowboat in the middle of the ocean. And when you get really far out into the ocean and you can't see any land, it's kind of like, it's scary. Mm-hmm. But that's the visual metaphor that I felt when you were explaining it. It's like, oh, wow, yeah, if you're a fine artist, you're just making absolutely everything up as you go. I mean, there are, I'm sure, guidelines that you can follow, how to get into a gallery, how to get publicity, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. But by and large, it's just you writing your own path. And I think that there's something really admirable about that.
I mean, I guess maybe the best way to kind of like distinguish like a career within like trying to make it as like a fine artist, or trying to make it as more of like an applied artist would be like, you can get a degree in math and you can find jobs that are like really make a lot of sense for having a degree in math. You could go be an accountant. You could go work as a statistician. You could go work, in any number of finance firms and insurance companies that need people that have majored in math. But if what your interest is is more maybe kind of like pure math research, solving like algorithms and maybe finding new proofs and theorems that don't have any like particular applicable use right now, but you're deeply interested in like finding out this new knowledge that maybe isn't quite there. You'll probably have to pursue that on your own time, and the rewards for it are going to be far less tangible. So it becomes something where you're pursuing it out of like a pure love for that medium. And in math, it maybe, that would be what it kind of looks like. And in art, it's kind of the same thing, where you could, you can have a whole lot of skills within drawing and within graphic design and within computers and all those things, and find real tangible ways to make a living. And then the ways that are maybe kind of more about the kind of pure exploration of that medium don't maybe have as many kind of real tangible career outlets for you, but you're doing it because you're trying to find out something new within that genre or that medium or something like that.
Definitely. Could you tell us a little bit about what it was like going out of school and then moving to New York? We've talked to at least one person before who'd gone the New York route. Or no, I've talked to a few people now that have been through New York. But I'm curious what it was like from your point of view.
Well, what I did, and I've probably, even just like the quick summary I gave earlier, I probably kind of gave a more like romanticized version of what it was really like. When I actually graduated from school, I had studied art, but I had also studied psychology. And so when I left school, I got a job at a research lab in New York. I decided I wanted to go to New York to decide whether I was going to try to do something in the sciences. I thought maybe I would go like into like psychological research or medicine, or maybe I would pursue art. So I kind of moved to New York with the idea that I'd get a job and paint and see like, what would happen. So I moved there and I got a job at a research lab at Columbia, and I would work there during the day, and I would paint in the evening and on weekends, and try to see if I would have what it would take to try to make a career as an artist. And so I spent 5 years there trying to get better as a painter, trying to get better as an artist, because as soon as I got there, it was like really clear to me that I wasn't good enough or didn't really have what it took to kind of participate in the contemporary art world. And it took me like 5 years to kind of build up a set of paintings that I thought were at least something that could, be worthwhile for like a contemporary art group. So anyway, that's such a bad description. But I applied to graduate school after that. So, that New York experience was really just about trying to see as much artwork like face to face as possible, so that I could learn how it was made, what it took to make it, and whether or not I could make something that was that good. And New York, there are a few cities in the world where there's just this complete immersion of art, where there are so many artists there are so many opportunities to see art, the quality is so high that it's a fantastic kind of place to be, because you'll just have an opportunity to see so much. And there's nothing more important than really seeing the work. That's kind of what New York was for me. It was just a way to know what I was up against and know what it was going to take in order to achieve what I wanted to achieve as an artist.
I think that's so cool that you facilitated it. You had your day job, but then at night you are working towards this. And I'm really interested in, you said that you felt that you weren't at the level that you wanted to be, and so you worked at it for 5 years. But do you remember, was there like a breakthrough moment with a painting where you stepped back and you said, yes, this is like, I've arrived. I don't know where this is going to take me, but this is a whole new chapter that started with this particular piece of work? Or is it just more of like an internal confidence that at some point you just said, hey, I can do this, whereas in years past I wasn't sure, but now I feel like I don't know where this is going to go, but I know that I can do this.
Yeah, I mean, I eventually got to where I started like a set of paintings that would like become my portfolio that I applied to graduate school with, where the number, where it looked far more original than the work I was doing like 5 years ago. Like as a student, I became pretty well versed in copying the work of the people that I loved. And, I got good at making work that was very reminiscent of the artists and painters that I loved. But when you're applying for like a master's degree in fine art, you have to kind of apply with a body of work that not only shows like a level of skill, but shows like a level of, innovation and like originality, something that could be useful. It's the same thing like if you're applying for a PhD, what you're trying to do is show that you are on a trajectory of trying to achieve some kind of new knowledge. And after a few years, I had a set of paintings that seemed to be something that I wasn't really seeing in all of the other galleries, or I wasn't really seeing in like all of the other painters that had made such an influence on me. It looked like my work, and it looked like it was, well done. And I felt like, well, at least now I can probably apply for graduate school and be in contention to try to go, make a career at this.
So do you think it's fair to say then that you were trying to find your voice, that in those 5 years that in the beginning it was very reminiscent of other people or other influences, and you could see that, you could be like, oh, there's Jackson Pollock, or
Right.
there's whoever else in your work. But then as time went on, you were able to say like, hey, you know what, now this is like this, I'm coming through this work, I'm speaking through this work, this is mine, this is, yeah, I can feel the Jackson Pollock, but I'm not seeing it anymore, or something like that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think that's probably exactly how, like you can't escape all the influences and people that are like really important to you. And maybe, it's even good to acknowledge the fact that like there are a lot of people that influenced your work, but somewhere along the way, you've got to have like enough confidence to kind of forge ahead and start describing things in your own voice. And once you feel like you're doing that you're not using somebody else's words, but like you're using your own words now to describe what you're interested in, then you're probably getting somewhere.
Very cool. I like the way that you phrase this, and I find it so interesting how everyone has a different take on this problem of like getting to that point where like, okay, this is the beginning. Everything before was sort of the prep work, and now I'm in this. I'm in the game.
Yeah.
Where did you go from? So you left New York and then you went into graduate school. Let's just skip past graduate school,
Yeah.
unless you think there's something
Sure.
very
No,
defining there. But where did you? So when you finished graduate school, then where are you? Are you still in New York, or are you in a different part of the country? And what's your next move once you're like, okay, I'm done. I have my piece of paper. Or I don't have my piece of paper, whatever your exit was.
Yeah.
What do you do after that?
No, I did get my piece of paper, and actually, what happened was, it's very practical. It's just that when I was in New York, I met my wife. She wasn't my wife there, but and we met in that same lab. She's a physician, and she finished medical school at the same time I finished graduate school, and her residency for she's an ear, nose, and throat doctor, was at Emory Hospital here in Atlanta. So, again, like being a fine artist, you're a little bit mobile more so than other people, because you're not necessarily like tied to like whatever job you're applying to. You can kind of do your thing wherever you need to, or wherever you might have to go. So we moved to Atlanta after graduate school, and I got a job at a gallery here. If you're a fine artist, you're um, a lot of us are probably working in galleries, working as art assistants, working at museums, those kinds of things. So I'm a preparator at a gallery here 4 days a week, and I spend my nights and other days painting. And I started, going to all of the gallery openings and meeting other artists here in Atlanta, and slowly having more opportunities to show my work here, and getting to meet gallerists and have shows here. And you slowly get kind of mixed in and become a part of the community of contemporary artists in whatever city you move into. But that's kind of how things have gone here for me. In Atlanta, even though it's a big city, and United States we probably consider it a very big city. I think it's a little over 6 million people. The art world, particularly the fine art world, is very small. And that's true of, like, there aren't that many huge fine art world cities. You got New York, Berlin, LA, things like that. But in even really big cities, outside of those few, art world powerhouses, the art world is probably just a few hundred people. So it becomes very easy to meet everybody and to kind of ingratiate yourself with the community, and become a pretty significant contributor.
And would you say that that's actually a plus for people? I know growing up that I often felt disadvantaged because I grew up in a little village, and then I moved to a city that is not known for, I think we produced Neil Young, and
That's pretty good.
Well, yeah, but I mean, Neil Young doesn't really help me with what I want to do. But so I always felt at a disadvantage, but I think the way that you've just framed it, it could actually be a great springboard, because there you can get access to the gallery owners very easily. You can get access to the people who can open doors for you very easily, because the community is smaller as long as you're, quote unquote cool and playing by the rules or whatever. Then it's sort of like you could make whatever you want out of it. Whereas in a New York or Los Angeles, there's so much noise around you that it may be very difficult to get started.
Yeah,
that's accurate.
Absolutely. And I think we were talking about this a little bit earlier, but the major thing I've learned, and the big takeaway I would say about what I've learned from the last 5 years after school and being in a city like Atlanta, is that it's all about trade-offs. That in Atlanta, the people here are nice. It's an open community. There aren't a lot of us, so there's a lot of when someone new comes in, everyone welcomes them with open arms, oh, thank goodness there's a new person. It's exciting. And you can call a gallerist, you can call the museum, you can call the writers, and they'll return your calls and they'll come to your studio, because there isn't as much demand on their time as there would be in a place like, say, New York or Los Angeles. The trade-off is that while it may be easier to kind of get a gallery show in a city like Atlanta, you're going to have fewer of them because there's just fewer galleries to show at, and there's fewer opportunities to kind of get your work seen, because there just aren't as many venues. So you're maybe not going to have your work shown as often or written about as often, but the kind of barrier to entry is much lower. In a city like New York, you're probably going to have a lot of opportunities to show your work, and you'll probably show much more often. But having that work written about or have reviews made about it, your chances are lower, because there's hundreds of shows opening that week. And so there's only a little bit of space and Art in America or Art Forum to write about all those shows. Whereas in Atlanta, there's only 3 shows opening this week. So your chances, if you're one of those 3 shows, of being written about are probably higher. So it's all trade-offs.
Yeah, definitely. I remember in Winnipeg, there's a great art scene there, and it was really cool that if you're on the outside, you would have no idea about this art scene. But once you're in it, and I was always just on the fringes, like friends of friends would have shows, but it was so cool because it was so closely tight knit and people would be having potluck dinners. I mean, this is many years ago. I don't know if I would still be having potluck dinners now. It'd probably be like wine and cheese parties or something like that. But it was like a family and
Yeah.
like with any family, you have issues and stuff, but it was so tightly knit, and I had never felt that anywhere else that I've been, probably because I haven't been anywhere long enough to really find that community. But I feel like in Atlanta, it probably, and all over the place, it has very similar communities that are very tightly knit, and it's nice to be part of those. I don't know. It feels like you're part of something, and you're connected, and what you're doing matters, and I don't know. It's just a really great feeling.
Yeah, definitely. And there's cities like Atlanta, like all over the world, where they're fairly big cities, and so there will be artists there. There will be people working within the arts, but the kind of art scene or number of events is maybe not huge. But that community, because they have something in common, which is art, are usually pretty close knit. And I think it brings people together across genres, maybe more in a city like Atlanta, where I have a lot of friends that work in graphic design or work as sound engineers and like the movie industry and stuff like that. And just because a lot of us came out of art schools, we have this kind of camaraderie, even if we weren't working in the same medium, that maybe you wouldn't necessarily have in like a city like New York. Like, I still spend a lot of time there. I have a small studio there, and most of my friends there are painters because we're all just trying to make it as painters. But in Atlanta, like, my next door neighbor is a sound editor, a girl across the street's a photographer, and like, we all kind of hang out because we have this, shared bond of working in the arts.
Definitely. So I don't want to leave this interview without talking a little bit more about your art, because you're, I believe, the first abstract artist that we've had on the show. So I'm curious, I've always been a very representational artist. I've been in situations where I've seen abstract work and just been blown away by the connection that I feel. However, because it's so, you see it and you can't maybe describe the picture in words of how you feel, but it's just like it's speaking to you. There's some kind of connection that you have to stop and take a moment and appreciate it no matter what you're doing. However, for myself, I don't know if I'm flawed or if I'm too much of a right brain, too much of a right brain that I can't make sense of abstract art to create it myself. But for you, could you explain in your own words, like a bit more? I mean, you did a little bit at the beginning, but what your work says, because I think it's interesting that we've already gone through how you are finding your voice, and it's been through an evolution, it's continuing to evolve. But how do you describe it?
I think usually when someone asks me to describe my work, I'll just give them like a description of what it looks like, because I think that's probably like the easiest thing. So like, when I was saying earlier that like, I usually will tell people that it looks like a bunch of gestural abstract paintings and maybe some imagery stacked on top of each other and ripped through. It looks like ripped abstract paintings stacked on top of each other. And I think like, because abstract painting and like the descriptions of it can sometimes get like, I don't know, too metaphysical, too academic, like too jargony, I usually will just try to say like, this is what it looks like. And what it's trying to do for me is probably describe some of the different histories of art, or different parts of like art history, particularly painting, and how they influence the kind of painting that exists today, and what that influence might look like as a result of all of these histories of um, modernist and abstract painters to um, uh, romantic painters to postmodernist pop art painters. And, it's meant to kind of be like a simile or metaphor for kind of what it's like to be alive today, where we're all kind of a mix of all of the histories that came before us and the traditions that came before us, and that our identity is kind of all wrapped up in this mix of tradition and contemporary modernity. That it's very different to be alive today, where our cultures are so interlinked, and we're able to talk from Germany to Atlanta so easily, and those kinds of influences are kind of unique in the way that they shape our identities today, as opposed to maybe how they would have been in the past. So, I mean, that kind of description is kind of long-winded and heady, but maybe someone just enjoys the paintings and slowly starts to kind of think about what's happening inside of the paintings, and can kind of unravel some of those different interests that I have besides just how they look.
I think that's a great way to describe it. And I guess I asked the question because I feel that there are people that I know that they want to create abstract art, but they are not giving themselves permission to do so. Mm-hmm. And there's all kinds of weirdness mixed up in that. And obviously, if you're doing representational, you can draw something and say this is a portrait, and it's a portrait. But when you're doing abstract, you say this is the feeling of blue, and then it's like it's very interpretational. But I want somebody to, if someone's in that situation, to be able to realize that you can express yourself through the artwork that you're producing, and it does have meaning, and it does have a place in the world. That it's not just something that you can dismiss, because there's, you never know who's going to be looking at the picture, and you never know how they're going to interpret it. But you can still be putting yourself into your work. That's not just splashing up red and yellow and say like this is abstract art. It's actually like there's a lot of thought that you can have behind this, that you can bring through the work, even though it's not represented by anything tangible. So
yeah, and I mean, I think the questions in abstract painting aren't too dissimilar from anything in like representational painting. Like, with representational art, it would seem kind of funny to draw a picture of someone else's drawing. It would seem kind of silly. It would seem kind of useless, and it wouldn't look particularly original, and whatever kind of like meaning was meant to be there would kind of be lost. The same thing is true of abstract painting. Like if you just make a gestural abstract painting that looks like a Jackson Pollock, it's not that interesting, really, and it doesn't really have any of the meaning that Pollock did, because it just looks like an abstract painting that's meant to look like someone else's abstract painting. I think what you're really trying to do is think about what the materials are that you're using and how those can be used to kind of make a metaphor for something that's not easy to describe by rendering. If you're trying to like make a painting about the way it actually feels to feel very anxious or to feel very worried or something like that. Drawing a picture of it may be less useful than actually being able to put on a canvas some type of experience that causes someone to feel a little bit anxious or a little bit worried. And I think that's kind of how abstract painting works.
Awesome. I like this. I feel like I've learned something. Any parting words before we wrap up this call, Brendan?
No. If anything, I almost just like want to apologize for all of the long-winded, probably indecipherable examples I've just offered. But if anything is useful, I hope that people find it somewhat helpful.
No, I think for me, it's so fascinating doing these recordings because everybody's seeing the world through their own lens, and I see the world through my own lens. And you often you fall into the trap of thinking that everybody's seeing the world the same way, but that's a trap. It's not true at all. So I find it very helpful to hear how other people are creating, are making their work, and relating to the world at large, in hopes that people listening can also realize that, they have their own way of relating, but also maybe that you're not so weird, that somebody else sees the world just like you do, and that it's okay to create whatever you want to create as long as you're, being thoughtful about it and being mindful. And if you want to take it to the professional level, that you're being serious about it.
Right.
And that anything is possible. You just have to start making marks on a page, and good things are going to happen from that. So I really appreciate it, and appreciate learning a little bit more about abstract art myself. And
No, I really like that. I like that summary. That was good. I'm going to take some of that. That was good.
Yeah. All right. Well, if that's it, then we will wrap this up. The show notes will be at pencilkings.com/Brendan-Carroll, BRENDAN-CARROLL. And you'll have links to Brendan's website. And I don't think we mentioned anything else really in this episode, so it'll just be links to your website. And thank you so much for taking time out to talk to us, and wish you all the best with your fine arts career.
Yes. Enjoy Oktoberfest.
Thank you.
Demands patience, skill, years of practice.
Ah, you talk like a fool. I would trade a century of practice for an ounce of inspiration.